We are here today to announce an arrest in the homicide investigation at the Potomac Assisted Living Facility. First speaker will be Chief Mark Yamada. That's Mark, M-A-R-C, Yamada, Y-A-M-A-D-A, Chief of Police for the Montgomery County Department of Police. Then we will have Captain Sean Gagan. That's Sean, S-E-A-N, Gagan, G-A-G-E-N. He's the captain over our Major Crimes Division. And we will have Lieutenant Colonel Stephen DeSerbo. That's Stephen, S-T-E-P-H-E-N, DeSerbo, D-E-C-E-R-B-O. He is the Lieutenant Colonel with Maryland State Police. And then after the Lieutenant Colonel will be John McCarthy, Montgomery County State's Attorney. Then we will have Lieutenant Colonel Kenny Brown available for questions during our Q&A afterwards. And we also have Tristan Martin, who is the Deputy Commander of U.S. Marshals. I will not be introducing the speakers in between. They will just come up in order of speaker. And again, we'll allow questions afterwards, about 5 minutes for questions. We will have Officer Cortez walking around with the microphone. Raise your hand during the Q&A, and Officer Cortez will come around with the microphone during the Q&A. All right, first up, Chief Mark Yamada.
So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here today. Along with those who Shira has already mentioned, I'd like to point out our Chief Administrative Officer, Rich Madalino, and our Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, Earl Stoddard, from our County Executive's Office, who thankfully could make it. Unfortunately, County Executive Mark Elrich could not be here due to a prior commitment. As Shira said, I am Mark Yamada, Chief of the Montgomery County Department of Police, and I am very pleased to provide some important updates on two recent cases that have now been determined to be related. The first case was a homicide that occurred in Montgomery County on February 14th at the Cozier Potomac Senior Living Center in Potomac, Maryland. That case resulted in the death of 87-year-old Robert Gorham Fuller, Jr. During our investigation, Montgomery County Police detectives from our Major Crimes Division developed a person of interest in Mr. Fuller's death, and they have been actively following up on numerous investigative leads ever since. The second case involved a Maryland State Police trooper who was shot by a driver of a vehicle shortly after he initiated a traffic stop near Baltimore early in the morning on February 24th. The driver/suspect managed to escape after this stop in his vehicle after the shooting, but thankfully the trooper has survived. Shortly after the Maryland State Police incident, investigators from Montgomery County and the Maryland State Police, along with the U.S. Marshals, began actively working together and eventually determined that the cases were definitely connected and the suspect was probably the same in both cases. I can't thank Maryland State Police enough or the U.S. Marshals for their continued partnership, not just on this case, but on numerous other requests we have made for help here and support here in Montgomery County. Yesterday, detectives from Montgomery County were able to secure and obtain an arrest warrant for Marquise Emilio James, 22 years of age, from White Marsh, Maryland. At approximately 2:30 yesterday afternoon, Montgomery County police officers, again, along with the assistance of Maryland State Police and the U.S. Marshals, located our suspect driving in his vehicle and were ultimately able to stop him in downtown Rockville. After a brief foot chase, the suspect was taken safely into custody. Montgomery County Police detectives served Emilio with an arrest warrant charging him with the first-degree murder in the death of Mr. Fuller, and Emilio is currently being held pending a bond hearing. I'll now turn it over to Assistant Chief Willie Parker-Lone, who oversees our Investigative Services Bureau, and Captain Sean Gagan from our Major Crimes Division, who will provide some additional details on the Montgomery County case.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chief Yamada. I'm Captain Sean Gagan. Assistant Chief Parker-Lone is here if there's any questions that he'll be available to answer when we're done with our presentations this morning. But I first want to say thank you to the administration and staff of the Cozier Potomac Senior Living Facility here in Montgomery County. Without their cooperation and assistance, I do not believe that we would be here today to announce the arrest of Marquise James in our investigation of the homicide of Mr. Fuller. On February 14th, detectives from the Montgomery County Police Major Crimes Division began their investigation into the murder of Robert Fuller, Jr. Detectives spoke with several of the staff and residents of the Cozier Potomac Senior Living as we attempted to learn more about the victim and the events that led up to the murder of Mr. Fuller. One of the staff members that was spoken to by detectives was a medicine technician at the Cozier facility by the name of Marquise James. Mr. James advised the detectives that he had worked the previous night and that he administered medicine to the victim and his roommate as per usual. The scene that day was processed and evidence was collected from Mr. Fuller's apartment. It did not appear that anything had been taken from inside the apartment according to investigators. Cozier provided the detectives with surveillance video from the previous night and the day of the homicide. And while viewing the video, detectives noted that at approximately 5:05 a.m., an individual was seen walking through a courtyard outside the facility and entering the Cozier facility using an exterior door. Approximately 10 minutes later, the same suspect once again appears, this time through the same exterior door before running outside of the view of the surveillance cameras that captured the courtyard. The detectives that same night immediately responded back to the Cozier facility to investigate the doorway where the individual had come and gone around the time of the murder. The detectives discovered that the door alarm sensor had been tampered with, which caused it to become non-functional. The detectives also, while they were conducting their investigation, found a small folded paper towel that appeared to have been folded in a manner that had been used by someone to prop open that exterior door. The detectives spoke with alarm technicians from the facility, and they learned that the last date that alarm sensor was functional was back on January 9th of this year. That same day, video shows that Marquise James had used that exterior doorway twice. He was the only person on camera to leave that facility utilizing that door on January 9th, just before the alarm sensor becomes non-functional. This past Friday, the department put out a media release which included a still photo and a short video clip of the individual who detectives had seen on video walking through the courtyard around the time of our homicide of Mr. Fuller. As we had hoped, the video elicited a response from the public's attention, and the detectives spoke with an individual that they believed knew who the person was in the photo that we released. Through the description provided by the tipster, detectives were able to identify Marquise James as the person believed to be in the photograph. The tipster also claimed that other people at the Cozier facility had observed James wearing the same plaid shirt or jacket on multiple occasions prior to the homicide. Early Monday morning at approximately 1:15 a.m., one of the detectives working this investigation received a call from an employee at Cozier who stated that they had located another employee inside of the Cozier facility while they were conducting their overnight checks as they will normally do, checking on the residents. The employee identified this individual as Marquise James. James' shift had ended at 11 p.m. that same night, and his explanation for why he was still at the facility caused this other staff member concern. James walked away from that employee, left belongings behind, and said that he needed to go find his keys. A short time later, there was an alert that went out from a door sensor to one of the exterior doors at the facility. James reappeared, and this employee who had had this initial conversation with Marquise James asked him if he was the one that had triggered the alarm at this exterior door. His explanation was that wasn't him. He hadn't gone anywhere near that door. And as soon as the staff member said, "Hey, I need to notify a supervisor what's going on," Mr. James grabbed his belongings and fled the Cozier facility. Once James left the building, the staff and a security guard went to check on the stairwell door that the alarm had activated at. And upon opening the door, a black napkin fell from the doorway, and there was also a small white paper towel that was also nearby, that very similar to what we found when we went back on February 14th, the day of Mr. Fuller's murder. The battery, what we also found at that sensor, had been tampered with and had been flipped around so that the alarm sensor for that exterior door was no longer functional. Early Tuesday morning on February 24th at approximately 3:30 a.m., a Maryland State Police trooper conducted a traffic stop of a silver Infiniti sedan with no tags in West Baltimore. During the stop, the driver, described as a black male wearing a black coat, a black hat, matching the physical description of James, shot at the trooper. The crime scene was processed, and I'm sure Lieutenant Colonel DeSerbo is going to talk a little bit more about their investigation, but after the scene was processed, they recovered a shell casing. That shell casing was entered into the NIBIN system, which led to a notification to the department that the shell casing from the shooting of the trooper up in West Baltimore matched and linked to our homicide here in Montgomery County at the Cozier Potomac Senior Living Facility involving the murder of Robert Fuller, Jr. Montgomery County Department of Police task force officers assigned to the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force responded to James' residence on the morning of February 24th to conduct surveillance while detectives from the Montgomery County Police Major Crimes Division obtained an arrest warrant charging Marquise James with first-degree murder of Robert Fuller. As Chief Yamada just mentioned, James was arrested by the task force officers yesterday afternoon in Rockville. Late last night, Montgomery County Police, along with our colleagues with MSP, worked together and we executed two residential search warrants up in Baltimore County. Both search warrants were processed by members of the Montgomery County Police Crime Scene Unit, and items of evidentiary value were recovered from both locations. This investigation remains ongoing as we work to learn more about Marquise James and any potential motive around the murder of Robert Fuller, Jr. The detectives have worked this investigation and have put in long days and nights over the course of the last week. Their dedication and relentless commitment to justice on behalf of Mr. Fuller to be commended. At this time, I'd like to ask Lieutenant Colonel DeSerbo of Maryland State Police to come to the podium to discuss the investigation into the attempted murder of their trooper.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Steve DeSerbo with Maryland State Police. And on behalf of the Superintendent, Colonel Michael A. Jackson, and our entire department, the law enforcement partnership that we have with all of our local, state, and federal agencies is incredibly valuable. Shortly before 3:30 yesterday morning, a Maryland State trooper from the Golden Ring Barrack nearly lost his life while conducting a traffic stop when the driver of a 2019 Infiniti, who we now know as Marquise James. As the trooper approached the vehicle, James opened his door and fired off 2 rounds, narrowly missing the trooper within inches. He then fled the scene. Without a doubt, our Maryland State trooper escaped an outcome that could have ended much differently. Thankfully, he suffered only minor injuries and was treated and released from the hospital. Within moments of the incident, agencies across multiple jurisdictions shared real-time intelligence, investigative expertise, and other resources to ultimately apprehend a suspect responsible for multiple crimes throughout our state. Justice has been served due to the extraordinary collaboration. And on behalf of the Maryland State Police, thank you for the continued partnership. Thank you, Chief Yamada. Thank you to Montgomery County.
Good afternoon. My name is John McCarthy. I'm the State's Attorney for Montgomery County. First of all, I'd like to give great thanks and appreciation to all the allied police agencies that came to work on this particular case. I think it's a great tribute and to the Montgomery County Police, to the state police, to the federal agencies that also worked in this case, that this work was able to be done. And this was a very, very complex case putting it together. May I say, Mr. James is 22 years old. He hails from Baltimore. He's been associated with White Marsh and other communities within the city of Baltimore. He was an employee at the Cozier Potomac Senior Living Center. He was a med tech at that particular location. His arrest occurred on February the 24th, yesterday afternoon, and it occurred literally outside of the district court building in downtown Rockville, and that was based on the coordinated efforts of all of the agencies that stand behind me. He was processed this afternoon. It took a while to get him before the commissioner, but he was brought to the commissioner's office about noon today. He was in fact processed, and he is being held currently without bond. The commissioner was prohibited because of the nature of the charges brought in this case to set a bond in Mr. James's case. A bond review has been set for him tomorrow in the district court for Montgomery County in courtroom 413 tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. At that point in time, a date will be set for a preliminary hearing. Usually that is about 30 days out, and within that period of time, the state will have an obligation to go to the grand jury, obtain an indictment, or resolve the matter or other charges. So there is one single charge that has been brought at this point in time here in Montgomery County, and that is first-degree murder, and the maximum penalty for that offense is life. I will tell you that I have had conversation with Mr. Ivan Bates, who is the state attorney for Baltimore City. Many of you probably know Mr. Bates. In any instance, he, because the crime occurred, the shooting of the trooper occurred up in Baltimore, he will have jurisdiction over those. We have agreed that because the homicide, because of the nature of the crime, would take precedence. We will try that case here first, and then he would be transferred to Baltimore for resolution of the other charges. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will open up the floor for questions for about 5 minutes. Officer Cortez has the microphone, so just raise your hand, and Officer Cortez will come to you to answer your question with the microphone.
Perfect. And I'll be holding the microphone for you guys. Hi, I don't know who wants to answer this question, but would you say that the person who noticed Mr. James inside the facility after hours on Monday may have disrupted what could be a second homicide that he may have been planning? Based on that, the question goes alongside that Cozier put out several times to its staff and families and people living there saying, quote, "There is no ongoing threat to residents or staff." Do you have any comment on that?
I can't speak to the messaging that Cozier put out to their staff. However, I will say that through the cooperation that we've received through our ongoing investigation inside the facility, I think the fact that the staff was made aware of what had gone on, it obviously heightened everybody's senses as to, hey, this was a suspicious activity that was going on. So I give the employee a lot of credit for taking the steps that they did. To tell Mr. James at the time that they had that second contact, hey, something was very odd. That alarm sensor going off, as it did right on the time that he disappeared. The fact that they were going to notify their supervisor, I truly do feel that we headed something nefarious off. Okay.
But to Paul's point, there was a killer working in their midst for several days. That's the first question. What's also the motive? We have a motive in this case at all? What's the motive?
We're still very early in the investigation, as I'm sure you can understand. With Mr. James' arrest yesterday afternoon, there's still a lot of work that we need to do to try to get a better sense of who he was and what type of events were going on or leading up to the death of Mr. Fuller. To your first point about yes, there was a, an employee who we now have discovered was the murderer. At the time, nobody truly did know that, okay, that they still had somebody that ultimately became the primary suspect in our investigation working at their facility. I do know, talking with my investigators, that Cozier did take steps towards hiring armed security. They made, they were making sure that they were doing everything that they could if the suspect in this case was somebody outside of their facility. But the fact that, again, they were making their employees well aware of what had transpired, I think, again, gave us a better idea or allowed for the employees to take the steps they needed to make sure that if they saw something suspicious, they made a notification.
Didn't they have to know that the likely suspect was inside the building because there's security to get in the building? The people are not transitory coming to and from that much. It's a closed community. You would think that probably someone who's in the building all of the time, given security, given the perimeter security and the like, the cameras, would probably have been from someone on the inside.
Well, at the beginning of any investigation, we can't rule out any possibilities. We don't ever say, hey, we can only focus inside of a, in this case, the senior living facility, or we're solely looking at a stranger from outside. So there were many different possibilities, and fortunately, nobody else got hurt in this case.
Over here. Is in the photo of the suspect in that surveillance video, is the suspect wearing a wig, and did you find that wig? I know that was a topic on social media.
Right. So I can't see the photograph, but I can visualize what it is you're all is up on the screen at this point in time. The surveillance video that we had from that courtyard that we provided a still photo from the back so that the public would be able to see the clothing that the suspect was wearing and the way that person walked, their gait. When they were leaving the facility, after exiting the facility and coming back towards the camera, it did appear that the suspect had a mask on, and at the time we had no idea that was a wig. There were a number of different possibilities in this particular case. Some people thought that could have been a part of a disguise. I will say that last night while we were conducting our search warrants at both residences, we were able to locate numerous wigs at one of the locations along with a mask.
Over here.
So this is a guy who took the time to become a med tech training. He's got a job, shows up for work. I can't find a criminal history in Maryland other than traffic violations, and all of a sudden, 2 shootings. Elderly man.
Right.
Any idea what this is all about? Can you just talk about, I mean, this is a bizarre, strange crime. Any idea what this is all about?
Well, as I just said, since this is very, very early on, the detectives have a lot of work that they need to do to try to dive deeper into who Marquise James is and what any potential motive would have been between him committing this homicide of Mr. Fuller on the 14th and then being involved in the shooting of the state trooper early Tuesday morning. At this particular juncture of the investigation, we do not have a good sense of why he shot and killed Mr. Fuller. Upon speaking with him, he said their relationship was very good, and he would never have hurt Mr. Fuller. So we're hopeful that as we get further in, doing more of an investigation, we're going to get a better sense of what was going on behind the scenes, what types of communications Marquise James had, what he was searching on his electronic devices, and we're hopeful that that's going to lead us to a better sense of why.
Paul made a comment about the statement from Cozier.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to the people of that community now about their safety?
I'll say that we completely understood the panic and the fear that the death of Mr. Fuller, the murder of Mr. Fuller brought out in that community. We took this very, very seriously. The investigators, as I said, have worked incredibly hard. Long days, long nights, time away from their family because they knew the importance of bringing or identifying a suspect in this case as quickly as they possibly could. As I said, Cogier has cooperated fully with our investigation. I think without their assistance, without them providing data on employees, surveillance video that we requested, and other pieces of information that were very useful in our identifying Marquise James, I still think we're a long way from trying to figure out who killed Robert Fuller Jr. and who shot at the Maryland State Trooper.
All right, so we're going to take these two questions over here, and then Carlos, this gentleman over here in the burgundy sweater. And then if anyone has any questions afterwards, we can make availability for you afterwards, but we just need to wrap up the news conference. So Carlos, if you can take this woman and then and this gentleman over here.
Yes, hello, Regina with Fox 5. My question is, were there any warnings or red flags even before these two incidents happened? And did Cogier mention anything about if he was, had some strange behavior, something that could lead to maybe answering a little bit more questions? Because this is, a medicine administrator, and I want to clarify if he was, providing medicine to Mr. Fuller and other patients. I mean, how long was he working there?
So it's my understanding that Marquise James was hired back in October of 2025 at Cogier. So he's only worked there a short period of time. Now, a lot of the questions that you have are part of his personnel, employee file at the facility. So I think those questions are better asked to the administration down at Cogier. We're hopeful that now that Mr. James has been identified as the person that that has been charged in the murder of Mr. Fuller, once his picture gets out there, and once people get a chance to see, learn more about this investigation through the media, we're hopeful that other people are going to maybe come forward and give us a little bit more background about any of the interactions that they may have had with Marquise James while he was employed at Cogier or outside in everyday life.
One more. Yes, sir. Dave with DC News Now. What can you tell us about Mr. James' criminal past? Is there a record?
That's something I can't comment on at this time. Okay.
Okay, at this point, we're going to conclude our news conference. Again, if you have any more questions, we will make Maryland State Police and anyone from the police department available to you to answer some questions. Thank you very much for coming.